Hi, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. My name is Jenkins. I'm a mixed media artist. I've been doing art for about 25 years. I started back at Northern Virginia Community College in the Human Services Department. And at that point, I did a lot of electives. I didn't take art in particularly, but all my electives were in art. I've always been interested in it. So I want to start with I have a PowerPoint I'd like to show you. So let me maximize this so you can see it better. This is some of my work. I'm happy to be here, and I really appreciate those that invited me, Padma and the others, for this opportunity. I'm a teacher also, and so I'm going to be doing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the slideshow and show you some of my work and what I've done, and then I'm going to spend most of the time on a demonstration showing you how I go about with my mixed media. So let me advance. Okay, this is one of the first ones I've done when I was still doing acrylics. One of my first sunsets. Not that long ago. This was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Very popular. I had a lot of people that wanted this. This is from a photograph that I took in Myrtle Beach. So this is before I started getting into the mixed media, the kind of thing that I did. Also this. This is a combination of acrylics and oils. So this one was from a nearby park, and I started it with acrylics and I went in with oils. So I don't always do purely mixed media. Sometimes I go back to what I know, which is the acrylics and the oils, because I started primarily in oils. All right, this is from Italy. I said in the write-up that I like to travel to Europe. So a lot of my inspiration comes from Europe, West Virginia. The beach is another one. I grew up near the beach, so you'll see a lot of beach and ocean in my work. So this is from a photograph that was actually taken in Italy, and I came back, and this was in an art show. This is oils. This is completely oils. This was also from a photograph. Actually, this one is not from a photograph. I did a watercolor sitting on a wall looking down on the countryside in Tuscany. Took the watercolor back to the States, and then I did an acrylic of that. It was, and it brings back a lot of very warm memories from being in Italy. Now we're going to talk more about my experience into the mixed media. So I started taking classes at the Workhouse Art Center and started incorporating papers and mixed media. So this one right here, I actually cut up I had some old watercolors that I didn't like, and I actually cut them up and I glued just this part. Let me go back. I glued the top part down and I painted in the rest. So that's a very basic mixed media. This is when I started getting more into it. So these are based on my love for the ocean. I got the sunset, and this is actually the one here on the left is, to say right, this one is from a calendar from Bermuda. Never been to Bermuda, but I thought it was beautiful. So if you look closely, you can see a lot of the texture in there. This is flowers, obviously. 2 different ways that I did the flowers. The first one right here, I glued down tissue paper that was painted, and so you get a lot of texture in the background, but I painted the rest. All the flowers were painted. This one is more, on the other side, is more of a mosaic style. So this one, I painted most of the background, but then I cut pieces of paper and filled in the flower that I had on there. So there's two different styles there. Another one with trees. Love trees, love butterflies, and they mostly come about very spontaneous. The one on the left, I really had no idea where I was going with it, and that's how mixed media is. You start by just putting papers down, and it's very freeing, mindless, and then you start looking at it and thinking of what it looks like. So that one to me looked kind of fantasy, so I added the fantasy like trees and the rocks. Okay, this is the last slide. So this is ocean. The one on the left, the turtle. If you look closely, maybe you can tell I have feathers that I put down in the bottom of the ocean. Those were feathers that I painted, and then I also, for texture, took old dried up pieces of paint that I had from my old paint tubes, glued them on there. The one on the right, I actually used bubble wrap. So if you look down at the bottom, you see those brown rocks, that's actually bubble wrap. And that one is called Plastic Ocean. So that one makes an environmental statement about how we have so much plastic in our ocean. So I'm ending it with this quote that I thought was very interesting. And it's really important that even if you don't think you're going to do well, just try, just keep on going and practice, 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 and you'll do great. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to show you a little demo. Okay. Okay, so now I'm out of that. And now you should be able to see my canvas right here. And I'm going to show you how I get started. So I use glue sticks at the very beginning. And the reason I do that is because if I'm putting down papers and I decide later I want to switch them around, I can still pull them up. So I just take a glue stick. So I have painted papers that I put paint on them. So I'm going to just take a few pieces here, glue them down. Sometimes I might use, if I don't have a glue stick available, I may use Elmer's, which is okay if it's on the bottom. You don't want Elmer's on the top because it could yellow, but it's fine on the bottom. I don't feel like you have to get a whole bunch of expensive supplies, but I will tell you what I use. As I go along, I'll tell you. So this is kind of how I start out. So I just put some, like I was saying, it's very relaxing and I'm not thinking too hard. That's one thing I remember from classes is the teacher would say, don't think. I'd be like, oh, this is different. So I'm not thinking a whole lot. I do have a color scheme in mind. Right now, I'm doing these types of colors here. So that's how I would start. And I know it's not, he's gluing down very well. And how I handle that is I take a brayer and I will roll the brayer on there. But so now I prepared for this class, I prepared a background that and hopefully you can see that pretty well. I've already glued all these pages down. So then this is all just cool colors, not a lot of thought went in. On some of this paper, I actually, if you can see, I don't know if you can see letters here at all, but I was practicing calligraphy years ago. I had a whole bunch of pages of calligraphy and I put paint over it. And so some of the ink shows through, and it works well because it's the non-bleeding permanent kind of ink. So I'm going to get started. Without further ado, let me show you what I use. So one of the things I use, this is called ultra matte medium. I don't usually use ultra matte. I use just any medium for acrylic paint, works really well. So it doesn't matter that much what type. So what I do after I have everything on here, I have to make sure that it's down since I used a glue stick. A lot of times you'll have stuff like this where, you know, it's peeling. So what I'll do is I'll take some of the matte medium and you can use an old brush or you can use a palette knife. And so I get all the places that it's sticking up, make sure. And it's okay to go over with this because this is archival. You don't have to worry about yelling or yellowing. And then put that there. So I get that on there. And then, so now I'm going to start adding other papers. And what I have here is I have an old, this is a magazine. I had tobacco, I think it's tobacco, and I thought that would be good to go down here. So when I look at it, I decided, I think I want to go with a landscape with a tree. And that's my go-to a lot of times. I like the trees. And then I have these, again, another magazine page. Now, I rip it, but I save the straight for the top. So I want to have straight up here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just start gluing down the magazines. But what I use for that, so since some paper is thicker and you need better adhesive, I use this, which is it's called super heavy gel. So I use this for the heavier papers. And so just spread it like you're spreading butter or whatever on the back of the paper. And then I want more sky, so there's the sky up here. So if you look right here, you can see how this is a very straight edge. I don't want that straight over here, so I'm just gonna like rip this. And then probably not a good idea to use your fingers, but sometimes I do, and I have to clean my hands. So you see I got the sky up there. So I'm just gonna keep going. A little more sky here. And as I use the thin papers, I'm going to my, back to the liquid one. So I switch back and forth. See how I just go over what I had before? So that's one thing you got to remember when you're doing collage is don't get too set. Don't get your heart set on something because you're probably going to be covering it up. And it's good to have some places like that still open so you can kind of tuck in. So I'm going to like tuck this in under that. Okay, so I think that's about all I want for the sky. I think that'll do it for the sky for right now. And I'm going to start concentrating on the ground. Back to the gel medium. And I also use scrapbook paper a lot of times. I'm missing my scrapbook paper. Okay, so the scrapbook paper is also very thick, and that also will need the gel because it is so thick. But you can find all kinds of designs. They have like such a large selection at the craft stores of scrapbook paper, which I really enjoy. But right now I'm just using magazines. And then I also purchased this paper right here, which is, this is like fiber, which I really like because you can tear it up and it gives you a lot of kind of greenery that looks natural. I got this at Plaza. And this I just kind of tear up and it works great for when I'm putting down that. But right now I'm going to start getting my tree on there. So I pre-tore the tree and I'm going to go ahead and I don't want to center it, so I'm going to put it kind of like over here. So go ahead and get that tree on there. And this way I cover up some of the print too. So I tore this, I didn't cut it because I don't, for a tree, you don't want a straight edge. You don't want it to look like a telephone pole. So now it's got a very natural edge to it. And then I can start with my branches. And I tuck them under there. And so it's good if you can get it on both sides. Sometimes I just like to run my fingers on both sides with the medium. It's messy, but it adheres better if you do it kind of like a sandwich. Sometimes I just paint the tree on, other times I do it like this, and sometimes I do both. Sometimes I will just put on this right here, center on there, and then paint the rest. So once I get a base, then I'm going to take out my paint and start doing a little painting on here. And that's how you kind of get it more cohesive. And it doesn't look like everything's glued on as much. So I'm going to start by trying to kind of incorporate this a little bit in the background so that they'll kind of blend in better to the sky. I'll start with that. And if you get buckling, again, you can take a brayer. I usually work flat You can take a brayer and roll it, but since I don't have a brayer handy right now, oh, I actually do have a brayer handy. It's hidden from me. So see right here, this is one of these you can pick up at a craft store, and that really gets out some of the air bubbles. So I go over like the whole thing really well and get out all my air bubbles. And right now I'm using a very diluted acrylic paint. I made it very diluted because I want to see a lot of this stuff is interesting here, the book pages, print and stuff. So I don't want everything covered up. I want it to be able to see it, but I also want it to have some continuity. So I'm just going over with a very clear paint, and I'm kind of going up here to the, before I get to the sky. And a little bit of this to give me some texture. And now I'm going to start painting the tree. So Joel, you hand me like one of those like round or long round brush, not too big. That blue one's good.
Yeah, we want this one?
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So now I can go over, I'm going to add a little shadowing on here. We'll draw brushing. And then now I'm going to do is work on more branches. So can you give me a thinner brush? Like a little thinner brush, please.
Whoops.
Thank you. Everybody's still with me, right? Can everybody still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Get some highlights in there. Sometimes I use purple when I do trees. Different colors. I don't always make them black or brown. Gray is kind of a natural color for a tree. If you look at trees, they look more grayish than they do brown. And sometimes I go for a little bit more realistic. Other times I don't. I just go with whatever looks good at the time. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and do a little work down the bottom here. So I showed you this right here. I'm tearing pieces of this. And then I'm just putting the gel, I'm doing the gel medium on here. The liquid medium. No, the gel is the clear one. This is the liquid medium. But see how it tears apart? You see that? It's got all these really nice fibers. I came to really like this. When I first bought this, I was asking my teacher, I'm like, what do I do with that? I like it, but I don't know what to do with it. And she's like, well, try tearing it apart. And what I like is, so now I can kind of push my tree back a little bit if I put this on top. And it gives it more texture. And so I just kind of lay that down here. Normally I'd work on a canvas, but since this is a demo, I'm using a scrapbook page. But I do a lot in scrapbooks. It's really great to keep practicing. So I can still add papers. At this point, it doesn't mean I can't add more papers. So if I want a little variation here, I can still glue on some more papers. So this is where the brayer comes in handy. See how it's kind of pulling off the page there? So I put a little bit of the medium right onto the brayer sometimes, and I just kind of do like that. And you don't have to worry if it's white because it will dry clear. the nice thing about this is kind of whatever's underneath it will kind of show through some, which I like. So I'll have some of this highlight coming through here. So that kind of pushes the tree back. So now I can go back and work on the tree a little bit more. Sometimes I like to listen to music. Music like really gets me in that creative mode. So I work in my basement, and a lot of times I put on music, and it really, if I feel stuck, it really helps me to just get creative, and it starts flowing, get in that creative flow. So will you give me like some red paint from my drawer and the painted?
Which one? Drawer?
Yeah.
Let me see the drawer.
Okay, don't worry. So I found that I kind of smeared this a little bit, but I really try not to stress when stuff like that happens. It's kind of like a happy mistake. So I just kind of go with it. And sometimes you end up liking it. This actually gives it a little bit of movement. So I'm good with this. But I rubbed up against it in my sleeve.
So,
A little bit of red in my black just to kind of pop it a little bit. Another thing I do also on the background is I'll do some stenciling a lot of times first before I actually start the painting. But since this was a class and I didn't want to take too much time, I just put down the paper. But a lot of times I will do a little stenciling also. So now what I can do if I wanted to is I could make this a fall tree. Even though there's a lot of green there, I could add some leaves to it. Or I could just have it kind of like this. And those are the questions that I have to ask myself as I'm painting is where exactly do I want to go? And I'm thinking since it's a green background, I want to make it more of a spring kind of tree. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to apply some leaves, and I might need another tube of, if you see any yellow over there somewhere. So when I do leaves, what I use is I use a fan brush. So if I don't have a fan brush, I improvise. So I'm just going to use a different kind of brush and just kind of show you how I do leaves. Is that the yellow? What about green, Joel? Green. Blue will work. Okay. All right, so right now I'm just mixing up some yellow and green, kind of getting a leaf color. And one trick that I learned that comes in really helpful is if you want your leaves to look a little more natural, just put a teeny tiny bit of red, and that makes it more olive. It dulls it down. So that's what I'm doing right now. I've got my yellow and green, but it's really, really bright, and I don't really want a fluorescent tree. So I'm adding just a little bit of the red. And that's just enough to give it like a little bit of a natural, but not mud. So I've come up with something about like this. And what I do now, and you got to be careful because it's still a little bit wet. So I'm going to just gently kind of go like this and start leaves. I'm going to get a bigger brush so it doesn't take me all day long. But this is a technique I learned years ago that makes it go a lot faster when you're doing leaves, so you don't have to paint in every leaf. So just kind of scumble. Takes a lot of paint. And I have to be careful to leave sky holes. That's one thing I was always told in my classes. Leave sky holes, because the tendency, I think, is to just make kind of a lollipop tree where you just kind of color it all in. But you really, when you look outside and you look at the trees, you can really see a lot of the sky. And this gives you that natural, pretty, where you don't lose the sky. And then also if there's something you don't like, you can just kind of hide it, which is always good. And you always want to go across your tree too with your branches. You don't want to just stop when you get there. Just gonna, so they do go across. You know, you can do it from there. You want to squeeze out some of this paint from some green over here. And then I like to add yellow to brighten it up. So I'll take the yellow. Yeah. Let's go this way. That's not too much. Okay. So this is yellow, but I've got green on my brush, but it's okay because I just want a little bit of a pop there to try to show like highlights. So I'm just kind of adding this yellow, brighten it up a bit. I'm used to teaching classes, so to teach with like no noise is kind of, it's really strange because usually I teach kids a lot and it's like always noisy. And then to give it balance, I'll go down here and maybe just add a little of the color down here so that it works well, but I don't want to cover up my pretty tobacco leaves at the same time. So I'm just kind of very, very lightly mixing in this paint into the bottom for continuity. And then I'm going to continue. And if you have, like I was saying too, if you have a fan brush, this technique it goes easier, but you can do it. As you can see, I'm making do with this. This is just an ordinary flat brush, a big flat brush. And I'm just layering, I'm building up. I noticed my paint started getting a little bright again, so now I'm going to go in with a tiny tad of my red. Give it that natural look. But no worries, I just go over. I don't like anything, I just go over it. That's the beauty of acrylics. No matter what you do, if you don't like it, just paint right over it. You don't know how many paintings I have that I've gone over. I've painted over 3, 4, maybe 5 times. So now I'm having a little bit of my black is actually mixing in with my paint, but again, I'm not stressing. So this is going to be a shadow. I'm going to call this a shadow area. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about it. But I will clean my brush off, and I will want to go on the other side so that I don't bring my black over. It would have been better if I let it dry first, but since I'm doing a demo, I don't really have that option right now. But I kind of like how the black kind of darkens it up. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to work on this side again. Make sure you have plenty of paint mixed up, and then you don't have to keep stopping like I'm doing right now. I'm going back and getting more paint. I forgot how much paint it takes to do a tree. It really takes a lot of paint. So you want to make sure that your brush is not like saturated in paint. You want to make sure that there's a lot on there, but it's not like gooey, because if it's gooey, you'll get these like too much. It doesn't work well. So I'm doing more of the scumbling. Across my tree. And while it's wet, I like to go in with the yellow, and that way it blends right on there. Since it's already wet, I get a nice blending going on right on the canvas. And my colors are very fresh. I like to work very brightly. Then I might add some grass down here. And I can do that with kind of pulling up. I have a grass technique I learned where you put your paintbrush and you just kind of pull up. I'm gonna do a little grass here. And that pushes back the tobacco, makes it look more like it's in the back. And I can paint right over this paper. That's no problem at all. So I want to just paint over this, change the color. Do that too. I'm not really liking right here, but since I've got paint on leaves, I have the option, I can cover this up with leaves. So I'm gonna kind of hide that a little bit. If you look right there, you can see where it looks like a branch, but it's really marker from one of my pieces of paper. So that's kind of the beauty of mixed media. Oh, I'm sorry, I just realized when I was walking my view with my cup, is you get unexpected surprises. So it looks like a branch, and I didn't even plan that. In the print over here, gives it a little, looks like there's something going on back there too. And one of the tricks is to know when to stop. So once you get into this undoing leaves, it's hard to say, oh, well, I better back off here. So I'm going to put a little more leaves, and then I'm probably going to stop shortly. So this is something you want to practice first, because you want to make sure that you don't get globs, but it covers well. So you want to, before you start this leaf technique, it's a good idea to take a piece of scrap paper and just kind of get the feel for it. So, and now I'm going to step back and I'm going to look at it from a distance, and then I'm going to see what I think. Okay, I stepped back and it looks to me like it's done. So I'm not going to overdo it. But what I do at after this stage is I look for loose ends. So if I have some paper that's kind of still loose, then I go in with the gel, because I really want it, at this point, I really want it adhered well. I go in with the gel and I will secure this. And then when it's completely dry, let's say this is a canvas, something I might want to make into a painting. What I do is, and I'll show you what I use. So I have two different varnishes. So I have a gloss varnish and a matte varnish. Can you see that okay? I'll put it up a little bit closer. And what I do is I mix these two together. And once I mix these two together, my very last thing that I do is I varnish with this. And what that does is that evens everything out. It just looks nicer. I don't always do the varnish part. There's some paintings I may not want to, but for the most part, for my collages, not for when I do acrylic, I don't varnish. But when I do my collages, I like to end with the varnish. And that pretty much wraps up, and of course I'm going to sign it. So that pretty much wraps that up.
Can you tell me again about the liquid that you use to varnish, please?
Yeah, sure. So, and this varnish I only do at the very end. So I don't put this varnish in with my paint, and I don't use it to glue. So this is just for the very end. So these are both from Liquitex. One is called matte varnish, and the other one's called a gloss varnish.
And you mix it together?
I mix them half and half. So what I do is I'll take like a little cup, and I'll do, I don't really measure, I just do like a squirt of one bottle, squirt of another bottle, and mix them together, and then I varnish. And that way it won't be too glossy.
Okay. And how about the bottle that behind the book, behind the canvas, the other one that open? What
This
is that?
one. Yeah, so
Yes.
This one is what I use. Actually, I use this as the glue. So this is matte and medium. So this is what
Matte
artists use. A lot of times artists use this in paints to stretch out their paint, and it gives it like a tinge of something. But the way I use it is I use it as a glue. So I will take like regular paper, nothing heavy, like if I had copy paper that I painted or like a book page or something fairly thin, I would use this and I just paint it on the back and then I put it on and then I'll go over it again. I sandwich it in between this. So that's what I use is this matte medium. Again, there's probably other brands, but I just happen to get Liquitex.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
The other thing is, have you done this with oil?
You mean the collage?
Oil paint?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't typically do it with oils, and I think I just never really thought about it. And the reason that this works so well is because this is made to work with acrylics, and it adheres very well to acrylics. So if you were trying to do this with oils, you probably wouldn't get the.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Could not mix together.
Yeah, now there might be a way you can incorporate, you could probably do oils at the end, once you have your papers down, instead of how I did with acrylics, you could probably do with oils. I don't see why you couldn't do it that way, as long as you don't use the matte medium with the oils.
Do you use a lot of black, Christy?
I typically don't use a lot of black. Like I started with a watercolor artist that actually told me to never use black.
That's good.
Transitioned, I saw more and more artists using black, and I like the way that it's so deep and it mixes well with other. You can mix it with other paints. So no, yes and no. I don't really use that much black, but I do. I have started in the last few years more and more with the black, and I like what it does. But I like to use purple in place of black a lot, and that's one thing that I did do, because I find that purple gives it a brightness, and it still looks blackish, but you get a brightness that I really like.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And the matte, the medium that you use is dry instantly?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It dried, the medium that you use, the bottle in the back,
Yes.
it dries instantly. It's dry right away, or
No, it takes some time, and that's the reason why. So it's not super fast, but it's not super slow. But one of the reasons why I start with the glue stick is because the glue stick, I can change it. You can't really change it very easily with the matte medium. If you get it quickly, let's say I say, oh, well, I want this piece over here, or yeah, you can change it easier with the glue stick. So, but yeah, it dries fairly. I would say it's fairly fast. I mean, it's not slow like oils. It's not like a super slow. It's pretty fast. Acrylics are very fast drying.
Christian, when you paint, can we add layer of other media, like paper or something on top of it? Like you said that the sky, if I happen to close the sky, can I cut a little piece of white and put it back?
Yes, definitely. You can do that. Yes, because you can make. Let's say I made a big error. I don't know, and I want to get rid of something. I could definitely take paper. I could glue over that. And then just keep going. Or if I wanted, let's say I lost some of my sky holes and I want more sky holes, I could just take pieces of blue paper and just glue them right on there. And then I might have to go in with a little paint around it to kind of get it so it looks like it belongs. But yes, you definitely can do that.
Do you have to wait until the acrylic dry? acrylic paint underneath dry off?
As far as for which,
Or
for
to
the
put-
varnish?
No, to put a piece of paper on top of it and use that medium to glue it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it would be better. Yes, it would.
Okay.
So it would, I mean, you could do it wet, but it'd be very messy.
Mm,
So I would recommend letting it dry.
okay, thank you. That's great.
Thank you.